Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to another episode of Heart to Heart with Bree. Tonight's guest is Faquita Akins. Please introduce yourself to the viewers.
Hello, I'm not a stranger to you all. I am Faquita Aiken Rivera, and I'm a native of Hilton Head, South Carolina, and I just really enjoy being on here with Bree's podcast and just talking our way through all of these different topics. So I'm a mother of four, a wife. I'll be married 20 years this year, and I think I just have some life experiences to have these conversations with her. So thank you
Yeah.
for having me again.
Oh, thank you so much. And, usually I choose the topics, but sometimes, God will put it on my heart to have the guest choose the topic. And, when you said, dealing with grief, I thought it was a great topic. I don't
Yeah.
think we can talk about grief, enough because there are so many people who are hurting
Hmm.
because of the grieving process. And I think there is a lack of understanding. And
Yeah.
I think the more we talk about it, I think the better it will be for a lot of people. So, I can tell you in my personal experience with grief that I have found that in order to heal, that you must face it and allow yourself to go through the grieving process. Do you agree? And what is your opinion on all of that?
I absolutely agree. Because the grief does require that healing process. Um, the form of grief that I experienced, which I've, lost many family members and friends, but the one closest, of course, was my mother. And that was a very, very dark time for me, but I had to allow myself to go through that. I had to cry, though, we want to stay resilient for other people, your kids, and her sister had already lost um, some other family members. And it was a shocking to us the way, and how quickly my mother passed. So you do have to, you have to go through it. It is not something that you can hold your breath on. It is just something that you really do have to layer it out and go through those different stages of emotions. Um, Even with my kids and my husband, and it was just a time. And I'm glad they allowed me to really, really express my feelings to the truth. And
Yes.
when I said I wasn't okay, they made sure that I, was, surrounded with their love, text messages, just a lot of things to help me remind me that okay, I do matter. And I didn't want to fall in a really dark place, but I kind of I did fall into that space because there's times when I'm looking for, for answers from that natural person that I know will give me the honest truth. I couldn't pick up that phone anymore, and then so. But you really do have to go through that, and that process is a part of your healing.
You mentioned, when you were able to state that you're not okay. Let's talk about pretending that everything is okay. I hate it when I ask a person how are they and you tell me everything's okay and everything's fine when it's not. Because I
Right.
think it's unfair to your loved ones because we're not mind readers. I'd
Right.
like to welcome my friend Karen. Thank you so much for tuning in. You know, I really believe that if you're not okay, we have to make it okay to say that we're not okay.
Yeah.
Because I think that we miss the opportunity to minister to others, to be of comfort, to be of
Hmm.
support. So, Fakita, I would like you to address those who are not being truthful. I'd like to welcome Latoya Hager. Thank you for tuning in. I'd like you to address that. The importance of being honest about your true feelings and emotions.
Well, just like when you tell a lie on anything else, you have to eventually, slowly unravel it.
Yes.
So, because the hurt is so embedded and it hurts your heart, I mean, it is really a shattering feeling. there's no need to pretend. It slows down that process.
It's true.
Um, and I can't say that there's a fast or quick way, but when I wasn't okay, they knew that I was okay.
Yes.
And they knew I wasn't okay, even like with my mood changes, like kind of being snappy or whatever. They knew that I was like, okay, yeah, mom needs a little bit more love. Mom needs a little bit more. So it slows that process down when you say, I'm fine. I'll be okay. No, we're not gonna be okay. You're not.
Yeah.
You're not gonna be okay when you say you're okay. And it's okay to not be okay.
That's true. I mean, that's true. I mean, lip service is not going to get you through the process. I think
No.
honesty plays a big role. Karen says, I believe everyone grieves in their own way. And that is the truth. But I think the biggest problem for a lot of people with grief is not acknowledging the depth of their pain, not acknowledging how sad
Right.
they are. I can tell you that I withheld how I was truly feeling because it got to the point where
Mm,
I felt that there was a timeline being put on me for grieving. And I remember getting to the point where I didn't feel comfortable talking about my son, talking about how sad I was. And I tell you, and I've said it on this podcast before, I remember feeling as if I was about to have a heart attack. And I
mm,
believe it was the suppressed grief. You know, I was internalizing the pain and suffering. And Karen is saying, yes, I always say it's okay not to be okay. And thank
yes.
you for sharing that comment. But yeah, let's talk about when we internalize grief because we think we're being strong for others, but what we're really doing is destroying ourselves from within.
Yeah. You holding that all that in, just like bottled up, like when you shake a soda, you go to open it and it explodes. You do have to wait for that soda to settle. So that's kind of the same thing, holding it in. And then when you do open up, you really open up, explode. And then now, because you've exploded on, the people that love you, who've been wanting to be there for you,
Yes,
now there's another process you have to go through. Now you have to, work on maybe offending folks or things like that. But holding that in does not help your health,
true.
stress, your pressure, headaches. I did, like I said, I went through all of this. It just really it messes with your mental.
It does.
It does a whole lot of the things that God done designed for us to go through. Like I said,
That's true.
and it's not that we're not going to go through these things. And there isn't a time frame, like Karen said, but we have to take advantage or learn to take advantage of the people that are there for us, the people that will allow us to cry on their shoulder, the people that will allow us to go in a room and scream, go in a room and cry, and those people that'll be there for us and holding our hands and just kind of walking it through it. But that internalizing can really cause some other later, health issues for us. So
I definitely agree. And Latoya is saying grief and depression doesn't always show up as sadness. In the Black community, it often shows up as anger, frustration, or even resentment. And you know,
mhm,
Latoya, I can tell you that I remember a Jehovah's Witness woman. She would come by my house from time to time. But that day when she came, I think my son had died like the day before. And I was very rude to her, you know,
mm,
and I could see the sad look on her face. And I apologized to her and I said, I'm so sorry. And I said, my son passed away yesterday. And she came back a couple of days later with a plant, a card. She was so lovely. And, you know, what I learned about that was there are people who are understanding, who are kind, they do get it. But I think
mhm.
unless we articulate our true feelings, how can we expect help? And how can we expect to heal? We have to get to the point where we know it's okay. It's okay to be sad, and it's okay to just, whatever it is, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah,
What do you think about that, Fakita?
yeah. It's yeah. You have to accept that it's okay. And you have to, yeah.
It's
It,
not an easy time. I mean, I was fortunate enough to go through intensive grief therapy,
mhm.
and that was definitely a lifesaver. Now, how can grief, I mean, how can therapy help those who are going through the grieving process? For many, I don't think they would even consider that as an option. But please, let the viewers know what therapy could do in the healing process.
As the therapeutic piece for that, you don't know that person, and because that person is doing their job, they're going to be a lot more understanding. They're going to take whatever you give them so that they can help you walk through that process and give you those nuggets and tips, and the therapeutic nuggets that therapist gives. But they're like, they're a mediator for you to be able to pour out whatever on them, and knowing that they're not going, it's not like you are hiding what you're sharing with them, but being, of course, they can't share what you share with them. So it is a safer space
Yes.
to go through that therapist road, or go down that therapist road, or go down the therapeutic road, and seek the counsel side of grief, or yeah, for someone who's either a coach in grief, counseling, or a licensed professional counselor that focuses on grief counseling. So I didn't go that route until later on. I went after, maybe 5, 6 months or so, and then their services is offered through your jobs, and some of it is free. They'll give you
Yes.
6 sessions for absolutely nothing when you have it on your services, for work. So it's a pretty easy process to get, scheduled, but I think it is needed, and I think our community, really needs to open up the envelope and
Yes.
read a disclaimer, not just what someone else said, their experiences, because everybody's going to have a different experiences with their
True.
therapy. So I think they need to read the fine lines, the little prints, and accept that help for themselves, and not from what someone else has experienced.
And what would you say to those who think they're letting down Christianity because they're grieving? It's like, I'm not showing that I trust Jesus. In my opinion, yeah, you're praying, you trust God, but you're still that hurting individual. So I'd like you to talk about that. Yeah, we trust Jesus. Yeah, we believe in God. And we are praying because when we're behind closed doors, I don't think people understand the crying and all that takes place. That,
Mm-hmm.
because coming to terms with the loss, it's a very difficult thing. And there are people who, I think, I don't want to use the word harsh, but then again, well, let's be honest. It's
Real.
harsh when you choose to judge a person for the
Yeah.
grieving process,
Yeah.
and you're throwing Christianity in their face, like they're not a good Christian because they're grieving. I'd like you to address that.
Well, in the Bible it says that Jesus wept.
Yes.
So Jesus wept because he had a moment of grief. It wasn't a moment of loss, but he was able to feel that grief. So if he wept, he didn't change from
Yes.
being Jesus. You're not going to change from being a Christian or believing in your faith base just because you have emotions. And emotions are part of everybody's buildup. We all have feelings.
Yes.
Some of us are a little bit tougher and can handle certain things to a certain extent. But for the most part, everybody in the entire continent, in the entire world, have shed a tear for something before.
That's true. And I think Jesus was setting the example, because there's something in healing in crying. I find that every time I cry, there's a cleansing, there's a
Yes.
sense of healing that takes place. So I'd like you to talk about that, because I think that when we withhold, we don't want to give in to to the crying. Let's talk about how cleansing and healing tears can be.
Oh, goodness, Bridget, we must cry.
Yes.
Now, the only cryless persons or people are those who do not have the ducts don't work.
Yes.
They can't bring the tears out. But crying is essential, just like reading is essential.
Yes.
In
Yes.
order for anything new to come in, you have to pour out. And crying is a watering out so
Yes.
that the new things can come in and develop in you. Crying is a part of the edifying process. Edifying. You're not going to forget your loved one. You're not going to
Right.
forget that, person. You have those memories etched in your heart. But the crying allows those memories to say, okay, for me and my family, we started a initiative for back to school, something that my mother wanted. But
Yes.
though we cried, we had to do something in the honor and the memory of her. And that's something personal that everybody can do, whether it's a plant in your yard or whether it's a picture in your home. It's something to keep that person, you know, a memory in your
Yes.
heart or in your space. Not an altar or anything like that, but just something to keep you in remembrance of your loved one. So crying, I mean, cry bucket, cry,
Yes.
cry, cry your eyes
it
out.
it it makes all the difference. And Karen is saying, I guess she's thinking about grief therapy. She says, I probably need to do that. I have lost two brothers, my father, my stepmother, in the last 7 years. Karen, I can tell you, it made such a difference. It made such a difference in the healing journey. And you know at my son's funeral, Fakita, I did not cry. I was intentional about not crying because I was afraid to cry.
Mm,
I was afraid that it would take the attention away from my son. And not only that, I was afraid that I would sound like a wild animal. I just did not want to do anything to dishonor his memory, because I felt so much pain inside. And I was just afraid to let it go. There are times I look back and I said, wow, maybe I should have wailed. I should have let it out,
mhm.
and not worry about how it would look,
Right.
because it was raw emotions that I was holding in. And I think it did more harm than good. You know, I think that we're so concerned sometimes about looking bad,
Hmm.
looking foolish. We talk about the ugly cry. Sometimes that ugly cry is necessary.
Necessary. And it's a necessary ugly cry.
Yes. I mean, most definitely. I'd like to talk about isolating. How
Mm.
harmful is it to isolate during the grieving process? And what would you say to those who, they have a loved one, they know this person is withdrawing from society? What can we do to reach out to those who are choosing to withdraw and they're choosing to isolate themselves?
You know, I'm gonna say this. I think, everybody has their own form of there's someone that may be present but they're not there.
Yes.
Excuse me. But when a person is just isolating themselves or running away from, it is common. It's not something new. It's not that they're struggling with a mental illness. They just don't want to maybe have others see them cry. But sending a card, knocking on the door and leaving a fruit basket, leaving some flowers to help them come out of that isolation. Don't stop inviting them to places. Don't stop
Yes.
calling them. Eventually they will answer the phone. Because I can use, like I said, I can use my own example. My phone was blowing up And I just, everybody was going to voicemail. And then at one point, Bridget, I turned the phone off.
Yeah, I can relate.
I turned the phone off. It was very overwhelming, and I just didn't want any bother because we were already having all these people over at the house. And then you have all these people that want to reach out from all over. And the phone just got lost. I remember the day of my mom's memorial, I couldn't even find my phone. It had been dead for a week.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Where's your phone?" I turned it off. I don't know. I just did not want to be bothered. But still being there for that person, still showing up for them, whether or not they want to show up for themselves. And they're gonna check their mail. They're gonna check their voicemail at some point. But just knowing that isolation is a normal process of grief. We just have to have a support system for that
Yeah.
person or those persons so that it won't fall into a deep dive or a deep depression in a very, very dark and dismal and gloomy place.
Yes.
But it is a normal form of, grieving.
And you know what you're saying is so true about, I remember feeling very overwhelmed. My voice my voicemail box ran out of space because so many people called me. And I got to the point where it's like I didn't want to talk to anyone. And then people were coming over every day. And,
Yeah.
it's like at the time you feel overwhelmed. I wish I would have had more of those visits like maybe a month or two later, when I really wanted to talk and I really wanted to be around others.
Yeah.
So it is a very overwhelming process. And I think that, what I would like to say to the viewers is if a person does not return your call or does not answer their phone, please don't take it personally. That individual is just simply overwhelmed, and
Mhm.
they're trying to cope with the loss.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the truth. I remember that process as well. Just being so overwhelmed and just like, we planning the memorial because my mother had chosen to have her body donated to the sciences. She was a biology major and
Okay.
she loved that. She loved the sciences and just at the very end, my aunt had told me and my brother, "Well, your mother confirmed this with me," and she had mentioned it, just wasn't a lot of confirmation, but that's what she decided to do. So it took us a couple of weeks to really plan her memorial because we were waiting for them to finalize, all that stuff. But that, yeah,
Now let me ask you this. I'm not trying to be too personal, but not having like the traditional service or like having a burial spot, did that take a mental toll on you? I mean, I can understand. I know people donate their bodies to science and all of that, and I get why they do it. Did that affect you in any way?
you know what? It really did not.
Okay.
It actually helped me through the process because it just reminded me of all the things my mother loved.
Yes.
Of course, God was her first love, but she would always tell us that, she's like, well, if my body is in decent, if my body is decent enough, I would love someone else to take something to so they can live on. Or if some students are learning about the sciences, I don't mind. I wouldn't mind that. And I never even heard of that until she did it. But it
Okay.
did, it really helped with that. It kind of for me, I don't know about my brother, but for me, it made me feel like, I was still, really connected with her naturally.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That
Yeah.
definitely makes perfect sense.
Hmm.
Um, let's talk about unresolved grief and mental illness. I when my son died, I remember I joined several support groups on Facebook. But after a few weeks, I just took myself out of those groups because
Mhm.
there were some people there who were clearly dealing with mental illness. You know, when I'd like to welcome my dear friend Maxine. Thank you for tuning in, Maxine. When people are at the point where they don't want to shower, they don't want to get out of bed,
Mhm.
they are clearly struggling mentally. And I didn't see anyone in the groups like offering any like professional support. I think if you have a group like that, you have a responsibility to the people who are posting, because yeah, it's one thing to post and vent, but then where is the help? Where is the advice? Where is the leading? And I'm not saying, look, I'm not a professional, but I believe I would like to at least say to someone, hey, I think that maybe you need to reach out to a therapist or reach out to your pastor or a dear friend. So
Yeah.
I'd like you to talk about unresolved grief and how it can lead to mental illness.
Oh, absolutely. So we know when grief remains unresolved for a long period of time, folks fall into depression. They fall into what is like a grief disorder. They can have anxiety. It's just a whole plethora of different things in the mental illness area that will, can cause them to just really, really lose it, come out of themselves, is what I
Yes.
would say. They're not in tune with anything. If you try to reach them, and of course they may have turned all the phones off, or they're not checking the mailbox anymore. So it does need to be addressed, of course. But like you said, sitting around in a circle with people who are going through that and no one's noticing that they need mental health attention, that's a little bit scary. And that's kind of a different conversation, because
Yes.
now there's a little bit of neglect in that space when you know for a fact this person has lost, if they've lost 4 or 5 members and they've lost them in a close proximity of time, that person could possibly really need some attention. They would need
Yes,
some attention, whether they
definitely.
want it or not. Give it to them,
Yes.
because you don't want them to fall into that space. And now they have to deal with grief on top of struggling with anxiety or struggling with a prolonged grief that just goes unnoticed. No one sees this person. So yeah, a support group that does not do that, then yeah, no, I wouldn't go back to that. I wouldn't go
Yeah,
back.
I mean, I definitely took myself out. And, you know, I remember a few years ago, there was I forgot his name. Is it John Christoph or something like that? His son, I think, had committed suicide. He was an actor on The Young and the Restless, and he had been in some other things. I forgot his name. But his son, I believe, died from suicide. But whatever it
Mm,
was, his son died. And he died not too long after. He died maybe a couple years later. And I remember saying to someone, I believe he died of a broken heart. And I know it happens to people like if a spouse dies, the other spouse died not too long after, because their hearts are so broken.
yeah.
You know, let's talk about things that we could do to be of support. I can tell you one of the best things that I did the year my son died. I'd already planned to go on a cruise with my high school friends. And that was my first cruise. And I kind of hesitated because I felt like it's the last thing I need to do. But it turned out to be one of the best things I could have done for myself. So I'd like you to address, you know, things that we could do to encourage others who are going through the grieving process, to encourage them to get out. Yeah, Karen said broken heart syndrome.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
what can we do to help those? Because it's, I think, to lose loved ones back to back like that has to be very difficult.
Hmm.
What are things that we can do to encourage, that person who's going through a loss to deal with their grief and embrace life once again?
So I'm gonna use my aunt for example. So my mom, our family had a chain reaction. My mother's cousin had died, and then my mother died. Then my mother's sister died of a broken heart. My mother's brother died of his ailment with diabetes. My aunt's husband died during the COVID time. So for 3 years straight, we have been losing very close family members. And she was the only one left. And one of her church members at church, she said, I'm going to keep watching her because she's been going to the graveyard every Sunday and
Yeah.
then also going to the graveyard a couple days out of the week. And she said, I hope it's okay that I can start cooking dinner at my house and I'll just bring her here to intercede, to have her stop here first. And then instead of going alone, we'll go to the graveyard together. Okay, so that was part of her process. She had someone, make dinner for every Sunday. She didn't skip a beat.
Yes.
Every Sunday. If she wasn't able to make it, her mother was making the dinner. If her mother wasn't able to make it, they all communicated who was going to be there with my aunt. Of course, she didn't want us to be because she felt
Yes.
we all are grieving. These are all our family members. We have lost everyone, but we still were there for her as well. So
Yes.
you got to pry in their lives, whether they want you to or not. If
Yes.
they have things pre-planned like you did with your cruise, encouraging them to go. There's no
Yes.
cancellation. You got to keep moving forward.
Yes.
And
Yes. I definitely agree.
yeah, you'll see the gloom and doom of their life turn around with the things that they still, can enjoy while they're going through.
Yes. Yes. I definitely agree. I remember when my grandfather died. My grandparents had been married for over 60 years. And I remember a group of us, we went to Jamaica, and I'll never forget when my grandma hugged me and she said that she would be next. She didn't think she'd be able to live without my grandfather. But, her children made sure she came back to the States. She would go and visit different siblings. She had her sister living in Virginia, so she would go and spend time with her. And
Mhm.
I think that made such a difference. She actually lived another 10 years,
Wow.
but I think that it made a difference. Her children intervening, making sure that she knew how much she was loved and how much she was appreciated. So I think that's definitely something to think about. I think that, you know, we have to be involved one way or another. Not saying you want to force your way. I like what your aunt did with the dinners. I
Yes.
think that's an act of love, the meal preparing and keeping habits going. It's something that sometimes it may not show the appreciation, but deep down inside, they are glad to be shown love.
Yes. Absolutely. And I know in one area on your questions when you had talked about, or you wanted us to talk a little bit about the creativity and
Yes,
them healing in that way. So music
yes,
music is one of the forces that can bring me back.
yes,
Music and a good preacher.
yes, yes, yes,
But also creative arts type activities, planning a paint and talk, paint and chat, paint and laugh. All those things really help. And we did all of that as a family unit. We would look through, old pictures
yes,
and be reminded of, certain things and talked about and laughed, giggled and laughed at those things. Even though there was still grief, we pushed through it with these creative pieces, the artsy things and the music and the dancing around and the listening of the stories. And
yes,
of course, prayer is always going to, you know, pretty much oversee anything, is constantly, calling and saying, I want to pray with you real quick. Let's pray.
yes,
Those break that deep dive in grief.
Yeah. And it gets the brain going again, I think,
Yes.
I think it, you know, I started this podcast out, doing my grieving process, and it was a part of my healing because, and I've said it so many times, I knew that I was on a healing journey, and I knew that there had to be others out there who were trying to heal from something too. And I just feel like, let's all take this healing journey together. Let's all learn from each other, and I try to find different topics that deal with the different things that people go through so that we can all embrace healing together and learn together
Yeah.
about different things that have hurt, things that may have been uplifting. I think being able to be creative, like writing again.
Oh yeah.
I journaled a lot in the early days of grief. I had just become a certified personal trainer before my son died. I turned to physical fitness now. Years down the road, it's like I went from one extreme to the other because I was working out so hard. I got down to a size 2. I was running, I was doing all these things. Mentally, I can tell you it was like medicine to
Mm,
get out and run, to get out and do these things. And it would remind me of my son because I think back to when I would ask him, hey, would you give me a ride to the track? And he would come with me to the track, and he would sit and he would bring his little drawing tablet and he would sit and draw. And every time I would walk around, he would wave to me. And I remember my mom asked me, he doesn't walk with you around? I'm like, nah, he's drawing, but he'll wave every time I pass him, I run by. That's actually a fun memory. But
yeah.
I know he was proud of me when I was in my 50s when I became a certified trainer.
Wow.
He was so proud of me when I got my driver's license in my 50s. I became a lot after my divorce, and my son, I'm so thankful that there are things that he got to experience now. I wish he would have been able to see me doing the podcast, to see me about to publish a book,
Mm,
because that was his dream to be a writer. So I think we have to think of ways, if we think of how can we honor the memories of our loved ones,
yes.
what can we do to honor them? Yeah, we're going to be sad and all of that, but in sadness, I don't think that really brings honor to their memory. And I
Hmm.
think that when we find something to honor their memories, I think it leads us to being productive in our grief. Would you agree?
Absolutely. It is a great feeling to have heard her, and I'm referencing her as my mom, to have heard her in her last, days before she transitioned, plan an entire back to school initiative.
Wow.
And she planned it in her way, though we've added things to it. She just said, I want you and the rest of the family to make sure these kids have what they need for school. Every child deserves a new backpack. Every child deserves a new pair of shoes. Every child deserves all the supplies that they need, uniforms and things like that. So that's what we've been doing for the last, it'll be 8 years this year.
Wow.
And I mean, my mother passed August 2nd of 2018. And
What a beautiful legacy.
August 11th, we had her memorial. The following weekend, we had the back to school initiative that she had planned. Right.
That is beautiful. And think about how many people, how many children are benefiting from that.
Yeah.
So you guys made your grief productive, and I think that's a beautiful thing. And Karen, I'd like to thank you for what you said. And Karen was my next door neighbor during my ex-husband's military days. So she actually knew my son. And yeah, it's grieving, and hearing you talk about your mother.
Mm-hmm.
you know I can tell you, when I lost my dad, we were not close, and I resisted in the beginning to grieve over him. But at the end of the day, my love for him, wouldn't allow me to do that.
Of
I was
course.
angry at him, but I found that, you know, going back home to England to go to his funeral, writing a eulogy for him, it was very healing. Acknowledging to the world that I loved my father, and you know, I had to let bygones be bygones.
Yes.
So I'd like you to talk about that. Like sometimes that the loved one that is deceased may have let us down in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the importance of forgiveness, letting go, and maybe writing a letter. You can write a letter, talk about how angry you are, I think burn it or whatever afterwards, but let's talk about addressing that pain, that animosity towards a loved one that is no longer here, that because I think that's something that holds a lot of people back.
Yes. Well, you have to say, I forgive,
Yes.
even if they can't hear you anymore naturally. You have put it out there that I forgive in this space that we call, the air.
Yes.
And that will help you really forgive, and it will lighten your load of even in the future things for yourself and relationships that you have that really need to be healed,
Yes.
or you need to go to apologize. Excuse me, or vice versa. It is very important. It is very important to wash away any unforgiveness. Now, I know what my grandmother used to say back, she would say, unforgiveness causes illness. And that
Yes.
always stuck in my head. And I was
It's
like,
true.
but I'm not ready to forgive them. I don't want to forgive them. They did me so wrong. They really did. They took this from me. They took that from me. They didn't include me. But I would always, every time I would remind myself what my grandmother would say, unforgiveness harbors and it infests yourself with illnesses. You can get really ill for just holding in that unforgiveness. So I've always vowed to say, I forgive.
Yeah, I think I like that. Karen is saying so true. Forgiveness is for you. It enables you to move on. And I definitely agree with that, because I remember thinking, okay, my father is dead and gone. I might as well jump in his grave with him if I'm going to hold on to the animosity. I
Right.
have to I have to let it go. And for those who think that you're hurting someone else when you choose not to forgive, what
Mm.
happens is you remain stagnant. You lead a very miserable life. I think you pass the misery on to everyone else
Yes.
subconsciously. I think it's important because at the end of the day, the past is just that, it's the past. I think we
Hmm.
have to embrace the present moment. And at the end of the day, maybe that person, if they would have lived longer, would have tried to make amends. But unfortunately, they don't have the chance to do that. So I think that what you said about putting it out there that you forgive, I think it is just so important in the healing process, because I think that you just multiply your grief tenfold by
Tenfold.
holding on to animosity.
Absolutely. It doesn't do you any good. I mean, it just really stunts your growth, and there's a level of maturity that we have to really kind of walk into, because of course that person, if they didn't have the opportunity, and we don't know if they did or not in the last hours or in the last moments,
Right.
they may have, because once you have a repentive posture, once that's a repentive posture for everything that you've done.
Yes.
So now, because you're here on the land of the living, you now have to walk into that shoe of forgiveness. So
That is true. And what would you say, like, I know there are people who they find out after their spouse is deceased, like they found out maybe there was a love child out of outside of the marriage. They found out there was an affair. They find out about all these different things. And I mean, it's very painful, but I truly believe, one of the things that changed my life, Akita, was self-compassion and
Hmm.
also self-love. Like I had to have enough love and compassion for myself to allow myself to heal and to embrace the healing process so I can lead a productive life. I'd
Right.
like you to talk about the importance of that, because I think that what's the sense of living whatever amount of years God gives us in misery instead of enjoying the blessing of getting up every day and having life?
We have, and I'm not sure exactly what scripture, but I know people, you hear about the fruits of your labor.
Yes.
And I want to enjoy the fruits of my labor. I don't want my fruit to spoil.
Yes.
And I've never been in that situation where, I've had that where a spouse have passed and then now here's a child. Well, that's an innocent child if that's the case.
Yes.
That child has nothing to do with what those adults' decisions were. And
Yes.
as the spouse that's left, and I know it's not easy, and it
Yeah.
won't be easy for anyone, male or female, to find that out. However, if you have this relationship, your relationship with God or your faith base, and it's supposed to be a positive turn for
Yes.
you, then there's somewhere down in your heart that you have to say, all right, I am now going to have to do something for this child, because a child don't have nothing to do with what my wife or my husband did,
Yeah, that's right.
that decision, and it shouldn't suffer. That child should not receive any long suffering for anything.
I
So
agree.
the fruits of that person's labor would have to come through now through that child.
Yes.
Once they grieve, because you don't want to, you don't set them up and hey, oh, you got to go ahead immediately.
Yeah,
No,
that's true.
they have to walk in forgiveness so that they can go ahead and face their grief, and then now they can either love on this child, share with this child, however it's laid in their heart to build a relationship with that child.
I definitely agree with that. Now, let's talk about a sense of gloom and doom. I
Mm,
remember that horrible feeling, like I was in shock when my son died. And I felt all of a sudden I became very fearful. I remember feeling that sense of impending doom all the time. I just could not see beyond the gloom and doom.
yeah,
And it took me a long time. I had to do some praying. I had to be very proactive in like getting outside in the sunshine sometimes. Like you said earlier, listen to music. But
yeah,
it took me a long time to have a sense of safety again. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone, but I definitely, I just didn't trust the world because it just felt like everything was out of sorts.
yeah. And that's where therapy and all that comes in. And you just, at some point you have to rediscover yourself, and you may rediscover yourself in a different place of hope,
Yes.
a rediscover of a different place of who you used to be. Now there's
Yes.
a new person, just like in I think it was Luke, either Proverbs or Luke, because we taught on that today, when Jesus said, I'm changing your name, Simon, to Peter,
Yes.
though you are the old person. And I know that's a totally different space, but though you are the grieving mother, though you
Yes.
are the grieving daughter, now I have to come and bring you out of that grief into a new name. So now
Yes.
your new name, I don't want you to forget the grief. I don't want you to, forget that I brought you through this, but now you're walking into this new Faquita and this new Bree. So
Yes.
there's a discovery of a new hope, a discovery of a new way of living without your loved one. Because, of course, we don't get any kind of handbook or
Right.
guide
It's
on
true.
this new space in our life. So there's a new, a new, a new. Now you're walking into this new, out of this gloom and doom. So there's a new space for joy and happiness again. And it took some time for me. I had a ministry and I just didn't want to do it again. My
Yeah, I
mother's voice kept
understand.
ringing in my ear, and I heard her saying to me, just a memory that I had of us having a conversation when I didn't want to come from the back. She said, "Now, why are you hosting an event and you giving somebody else the mic? This is something that the Lord had put in your belly. So you
Yes.
take that mic and you go ahead and you speak up and you come out from amongst them." So in that gloom and doom, we have to come out from amongst that grief,
Yes.
the mic, and speak on a new.
Yes. I
On
like how you put that, Fakita. You know, you're taking me back to something that my cousin Charmaine and my cousin Andrea both said to me. They were like, this is your new normal. You have to learn to live with this new normal.
yeah,
And I remember at the time, like, I don't want to hear anything about a new normal. I want my son back. I
right,
want my old life.
right.
But that was not going to happen. So it's like I would always think about that. You're embracing the new normal,
Hmm.
what's now normal to you. And it took a little while. And I'm glad you mentioned like with your ministry because it's easy to give up on the things that you embraced before, things that brought you a lot of excitement, because it's easy to give up on things. But what did embracing or re embracing your ministry do for you?
Oh, I mean, it gave me a great grace of boldness, that I didn't think I had, resilience that I didn't know was inside of me. I was considered the baby,
Yes.
even though I was the oldest granddaughter. But my family would say I was the baby. So even in some of my growing up into my early adult, they did everything for me. So
Yeah.
this kind of this sense of boldness, and now doing this ministry, it this gave me a sense of ownership too. Like,
Yes.
okay, now this is really, really a relationship that I built with God, and I can't believe that He placed this on me, the baby.
Yeah.
So I would really just say a bold and a sharper, more mature side of me came out of that.
Yes, and I could see, I can see that. I can see that. Karen is saying my mom passed around Mother's Day, and my brother passed on Mother's Day. I have to reset myself every Mother's Day. That has to be difficult. The milestones. Let's talk about the milestones. The milestones have been my biggest struggle, like from
Yeah.
November the 13th on my son's birthday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and then January, the date of his passing, then
Mhm.
February, Super Bowl Sunday, the date of his funeral. It's like from November the 13th to Super Bowl Sunday, I would be so, and it would be a very difficult time. Let's talk about things that we can do during the milestones that can help us instead of having us feeling like we have that cloud of grieving over us once again. What can we do on the milestones?
So my mother passed August, and then her birthday is September, and then she had two grandchildren that had birthdays in October. And then Thanksgiving was her favorite holiday. She loved going to her sisters and cooking. So for my milestone, I've always done her lima beans. Was my thing. I would either do the lima beans or the pot roast.
Yes.
That's considered milestone that I did for the Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Now we do, again, I was saying we do that initiative, but seems like every year when it comes up to it, like last year for me, I grieved a lot heavier because it was the exact same day. It was August 2nd that we had the,
Yes.
it was August 2nd that she passed. So
Yes.
it was, and I kept telling everyone, I said, this year is different. I'm feeling a little bit, no one really catch that. I think maybe one person caught it. And I remember at the event just really breaking down because I wasn't able to really, but we do have that as a milestone to, kind of remember her.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
because my brother's birthday is in September and he lives in her home, we do a celebration for him, and she's always included in that in some way, whether it's a storytelling. And we had he had a baby that didn't get to meet her, so she's all
Oh,
for me. I'm able to share those stories about her grandmother, um, and tell her how much like her grandmother she is.
yes.
So those are the different milestones, and we have several like that's pinpointed throughout from August all the way to December.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. See, that's good. And that's one of the things that my therapist helped me with, how important it is to have a plan on those milestones to
Hmm.
help cope. Because, you know, it's easy to just want to lie in bed, be depressed, and all of that. But at the end of the day, that does not honor the memory of the loved one, and it pulls you back
Hmm.
into that pit of depression. So, Karen, try to think of something. Mother's Day is right around the corner. Try to plan something special for yourself that will help you to honor their memory. Plan
Yeah.
something special. Try to plan something special. Now
And
let's talk
can I
about.
make a suggestion to
Sure,
Karen? I
sure.
mean, and it's so, there's like, for me, I don't, because I have my own children, you know, and they do things for for me for Mother's Day. But I'd always said, like when I see mother daughters or like a mother daughter brunch, that I said I was still going to attend those mother daughter brunches. And that way, women's ministry for me will be built out of those spaces.
Yes.
And it helps because at some point, I'm going to have a daughter in law maybe one day or a granddaughter maybe one day. And if not, I have a lot of little girls that I just have been mentoring. So I considered like I'm their step in mother, because some of them have very young moms. But if there's some sort of women's ministry that they get together every quarter, uh, they may get together in January, then they may get together again in April, then they may get together and, joining or being involved in some sort of women's ministry or movement in her area would be uh, fabulous for her, going through that process of milestoning.
Yes, and I like that. I like that. Hello, Mikey. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let's talk about honest conversations. How important is it to have the honest conversations? I think that it has to be acceptable where we can be honest about how hurt we are,
Oh, yeah.
how we're struggling to move forward, to feel comfortable enough to say, I'm having a bad day,
Yeah.
to say that, you know what, I'm not coping with this very well, instead of suppression. So
Yes.
please address the honest conversations.
Now, when you're honest, again, that it just helps the load become a little lighter. It lightens
Yes.
up your load of saying, I'm okay when you're really not okay. If you're not okay, you're not okay, and it's okay to say it.
That's
Honestly
true.
say, I am not okay. I go into my job sometimes. My mother was a teacher, and one of the teachers just the other day, the one that I'm pretty close with her. And I said, "Oh my gosh, what you just did, your movement that you just reminded me so much of my mother, and I honestly started crying. And it's been 7 or so years
Yeah.
since my mom transitioned, and it was an honest opportunity for me, and it made my day lighter. Because
Yes.
if I hadn't said to her and I saw her in that turn, however she had her face, it reminded me of my mother. I could have left out that room, closed my door for a little bit, told them that I wanted to be off radio for a while and I wasn't going to be able to service any children for 30 minutes, and just cried alone. That probably wouldn't be healthy for me.
Right.
But yes, it lightens up your load when you have honest conversation with people and telling them, y'all, I'm just not okay right now. I need a hug. I need somebody to give me a little encouragement right now.
I think it allows others to be a blessing, you know, and it teaches others how to be a blessing because
Mhm.
you sharing that with her, what she did, you know, yeah, it was a movement or whatever, but I'm pretty sure she went home feeling like she was a part of something special.
Absolutely. 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 That's the truth. And I am definitely one of those types of persons that I want to be a part of someone's special moment of healing.
Yes.
That is
Yes.
one thing that I know that I have, like grace upon me, is there's no strife. I want to, your healing process is now you can elevate and do ministry. You can do all these things. And once you become this new person,
Yes.
just kind of living in this new norm.
I definitely agree with that. Why should we allow ourselves to heal, and how harmful is it to numb the pain?
Well, you need to allow yourself to heal because you have more. There's purpose over you. There's purpose on your life. There's a destiny for you to arrive to, and numbing is a just another form of telling a lie in yourself and how you feel.
Yes.
So you have purpose, you're destined, you have plans. There's movement that Holy Spirit wants you to get into. And when you're numb and away and sunken, nobody's going to see that, or maybe they will, but they won't embrace it the way you need it to be embraced. So be
Yes.
free and fly like an eagle.
Yes. I think it takes away your quality of life
Mm-hmm.
when you stop allowing yourself to feel. You deny yourself pleasure. You deny yourself joy and happiness when you're
Mm-hmm.
suppressing and you're shutting things out. And I do think, like I said, my biggest lesson was feeling the pain. And I know for some people it doesn't make sense, but I had to feel the pain to heal, to begin to feel normality once again, and even understand like it was okay to laugh, but it was also okay to cry. You
Yes.
know, honor the different emotions. They come as a tidal wave sometimes, and when they're least expected, like you had your moment at school, you were at
Mm-hmm.
work. But I think when we try to resist it, I think we make things a lot harder on ourselves.
Yes. Yes. And you prolong the suffering when you numb.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Now let's talk about healing as a couple. There are so many couples who have lost children who end up divorcing. I
Mm,
think that's a common thing. And I think it's that when you separate in the grief journey instead of coming together, because I think as a couple, I think you can help each other through the pain.
yeah.
I think that, like, I wish I was going through a divorce at the time, but even if
Mm,
I wasn't, I don't think my ex was the type of person that I just don't see him being the type that could have helped and helped me during that process. But I do think that there are couples that if they just had those honest conversations,
yeah.
you know, if they didn't blame each other, or if they weren't trying to be the brave one, or if they weren't, because sometimes people get mad like, well, why is she not crying?
Right.
Or why is he laughing? Why is he able to go out? But they don't know what goes on behind closed doors when he's in that bathroom by himself. Or do you get what I'm saying?
Yes.
People grieve differently, as Karen said earlier. But
Yes.
please talk about the importance as for couples to come together. And it doesn't have to be a child, it could be a parent, it could
Right.
be in whatever it is. But please talk about the importance of coming together during the grieving process as a couple.
I'm glad this is a one space here where we can talk about it because, you know, when I lost my mom, my husband and I had just come back in our restored marriage. We had separated for a year and some change, and he had a rough relationship with my mother, but he respected my mom.
Yes.
When he came back, he came back a different person. He came back mature. And, my mother saw that, and she was, said, oh, this is what God wants you to be. This is who God wants you to be. However, the feelings that I felt when I lost her was different. He didn't really understand because he still
Yes.
had, but patience with those persons, open communication, being honest, not being offended, because we all have a way of grieving. Everybody grieves differently. I might want to wear one of her muumuus or whatever that he's like, no, that don't look right. But this is my way of
Yeah.
grieving and going through that. Not withdrawing yourself, not running away from the hard conversation because you're going to have those. And especially for people who have lost a child, losing a child, especially if that mother carried that child for 9 months, they're definitely going to grieve a little different than the father. So if that daddy had, the father finds that mom in the room in the closet looking at them clothes, you staying in the room with her while she look at the clothes or touch the clothes or whatever until she can really put some closure to it.
Yes.
There's never any lock in and on any closure because you will never have any closure. That's a
Yes.
piece of your heart that's now, it's gone with God, but not withdrawing, having patience and open communication and understanding of what that person is going through as an individual.
Yes. I mean, and what do you think? Karen says so true because it's hard for couples to even make it through sickness. I think communication is key. I
Hmm.
think if we were to have these honest conversations, like you said earlier, sometimes you may need a hug, you
Hmm.
know, you know, wrap your arms around your spouse, let them feel safe. I mean, sometimes I think when a person feels safe, they can be true in showing their emotions.
Yes.
They will feel comfortable enough to cry, and it's okay for men to cry, you know, especially during grief. I think you should feel safe enough with your spouse to be able to cry. Let it all hang out, the
Let
good,
it all
the bad,
out.
and the ugly of it. I think that it's sad when couples go their separate ways when it could have been avoidable. Just
Yeah,
some communication, maybe some counseling, but being able to trust each other enough with your grief and not being judgmental because this person is not grieving in a way that you feel they should be grieving, because it is a very personal journey. But
it
I
is.
would say, lean on each other.
Hmm.
United we stand, divided we fall. And I really do believe that is true.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, let's talk about healing as a family. That's something that I wish that my children and I would have been able to come together in our grieving over Demetrius. I
Hmm.
think we became three wounded individuals that kind of separated and not really knowing how to navigate the process, not really knowing how to come together. I believe if we had come together, it would have made things better for all of us. But
Yeah.
it's a personal thing, and I think you can't force people to grieve with you, but I think if some people realize there's the option there for us to come together in this moment of pain, I think it could be very healing. What do you think about that?
I do think as well the same, and I think that sharing the grief amongst each other just really develops a stronger bond as a unit. There goes again, everybody has a grieving space, a grieving posture, if you want to say, the way they're going to grieve about the loved one, but that bond as a family and grieving together. There may be a night of writing, and so we're writing this piece in honor of,
Yes.
or something that your loved one loved to do, make it a movie night or something.
Yes.
Bond together, and that way you are able to talk, you're able to cry, you're able to support one another, remember your loved one together, um, because no one should do it alone unless you're just alone anyway. And even when you're alone, you should not put yourself in a space of being by yourself in this
Yes.
process. No one should suffer any sort of pain alone.
And that's true. Now I would like you to address, grief being a lonely journey. I can tell you that I've never felt so lonely in my entire
Mm.
life when, it was just difficult because I've never felt so misunderstood in my life. I I just felt so many different emotions, and that's the loneliest I've ever been in my life. Please talk about the loneliness of grief. Did you experience that when you were grieving the loss of your mother? You felt like you were the only person that was going through whatever it was. And I mean, let's talk about that.
I did feel like that. Let me make sure this doesn't go out. It says my battery is
All right,
going.
no problem.
Hold on one second.
No problem.
Okay, there it goes.
Okay, you good? Okay.
I think the reason why I felt alone, because I had already been going through, like, me and my husband just um, got back together. So that process was already lonely, and we restored our marriage in April. Then my mom passes in August.
Wow.
So it was that road was really rough for me, because I needed to be there, but I also had, it just was a really,
Yeah.
really solitude time for me. It was hard, and I can't believe I can't really explain it, because it was really that lonely
No,
for me.
I get it. No, I get it. I
And
get it. It's
I
hard
had
to describe it.
family, I had them, I had my brother, but I still did not feel that I was in there.
Now I can relate. I can so relate to that. Karen is saying I lived in a different state from my other family, so I felt lonely. I think the loneliness makes it even harder.
Hmm.
The loneliness that is, I've never felt anything like that before in my entire life. Had you ever experienced that level of loneliness?
No, never. This was the first time ever.
Yeah.
I felt like, how they talk about the black sheep.
Yes.
I felt, and it was just a weird feeling. And I was going to see my mom when she was I was doing all of that. I was with her most of the time. I even remember her telling me one night, she said, call your husband and tell him you staying at the hospital with me tonight. So it wasn't like I was there, but I felt like I was alone. I
I
just,
get it.
and maybe, if my family, if they see this, I'm like, now why is Fakita thinking that she was alone? Because and maybe that was the grief in me. Maybe I
I
knew
think
that.
it's grief does that. I think it's just a part of the grief journey because,
Mhm, mhm.
I was getting phone calls. I had friends coming by all the time, but I felt very alone. So trust me, I get exactly what you're saying. Now, I'd like to talk about why it is important to open up to the process, feel the pain, process the thoughts and emotions to allow healing. I know that some people resist grieving because they think that the pain will be overwhelming, but I would like to say to the viewers that from my personal experience, I wasn't able to begin my journey of healing till I acknowledged and I was absolutely truthful about how I felt. And even though it's been 10 years, Fakita, I can tell you I still have those random moments.
Oh, of
But
course.
I've allowed myself to cry when I need to, because I don't think it ever fully goes away. You become functional, you learn how to deal with it. But I think it's important that we embrace the process. I'd like you
Mhm.
to address that.
Well, I think that people think when you are looking like you're healed or you're laughing again, it looks as if you have forgotten about your loved one.
Right,
Um, going into the Walmart and I'm going into the Walmart and I'm like, I'm not knowing that I'm having this big grin or smile on my face. I'm walking in the Walmart alone and I have one of the locals saying, how you doing this? How you getting out of bed? How you getting out the house? How you so happy? And I had to tell her, girl, me and my mama had a unique relationship. Like, and just because you see me pressing through, you don't know what happened when I go in the car and I
right.
smell her scent. You're
That's right.
not with me all the time. And I just explained that I didn't want the healing that I was processing to seem like it was so early to heal.
Right,
I put myself in every single organization that she was a part of. I wanted to experience what she would always talk about, being an advocate in the community. And then I realized all those weren't for Fakita. They were her footprints, and there was no way that I was going to fill those shoes. So I healed and I went through that process of feeling guilty because,
yes,
like I said, I didn't want anyone to think that I had forgotten about my mama.
yes, I get it.
Nobody's going to forget about their loved one,
That's so true. I
but
mean,
you
that is
forget
true. That
yourself.
is true.
You'll forget yourself if you don't open up to the process. You got to
Yes,
open up to that process because you'll find yourself sunken.
it's true. It's true. And I tell you, families, couples, we mentioned that earlier, they fall apart.
Hmm.
People lose their way. And, life is for the living, it's a gift.
It's a gift.
I think that we honor God when we, embrace life as we should. And I really believe that, like, doing this podcast and trying to make myself useful, trying to do things to help others, every everything good that I try to do, I believe it honors my son's memory.
Yeah.
And I think it just makes me feel happy. And when you speak of your mother and the things that you're doing, I can see the love that you had for your mom. And I'm pretty sure your mom would be very proud of you. And I just appreciate that you chose this topic and you were so honest in your sharing about your experience. And I'm truly thankful for that. Now, do you have any closing thoughts that you would like to share with the viewers?
I just want to just say to people that, just like weeping endures for a night, and it's not really a night, it's a season where you will go through your process of grief, but having open communication, exposing yourself for different communities, finding the right space for you, you will go through that grief and you will have like a change over in your thought process on how you really know how deeply you love your loved one, but you'll really know how to posture yourself. And like you said, life is for living. and continuing to live and continuing to keep the memories about your loved one in your heart closely etched there so you can move on with your own life. So I always just honor you for doing this. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
having me. I think this is a trend. It's almost like we're gonna have a TV show one of these days.
I have enjoyed our conversations, and
Yes.
you know, I was so glad, like I said, that you chose grief, because I think that a lot of people really don't allow themselves to grieve properly. And you know what? It's not a one size fits all type of process. But
Mhm.
I think that for many of us, especially in the Black community, we don't like to embrace vulnerability. We don't like to admit that we need mental health services because
Mhm.
it's looked upon as a weakness, when I think it takes strength to acknowledge the weakness,
It
to
does.
take care of yourself. So I
It does.
think a little self compassion and self love through the process makes all the difference in the world. And, Fakita, like I said, I'm very thankful. And, I saw that you did a post on Facebook the other day about is it a tutoring service?
Oh yes,
Would you like to just tell the viewers
a
a little
little bit.
something about it? And I'd love for you to come back and talk about that.
Oh, absolutely. So it's called the Elysian Gifts, and we are, it's a journey that we've started to introduce to families. And it's more of a behavior coaching, tutoring, kids who have different behavior challenges, parents who may get phone calls every day about their kids' behavior in class and school throughout the day, or even in their after school programs. We are building this platform to be able to provide workshops for these children, and they're going to be coming in increments of 3 hours, and we want to do the 3 hours because we want to have activities with them as well, and not just be this authoritative figure. We want to be able to have a space for them so they could do different activities and hands-on activities. Some kids are not a part of any kind of extracurricular like sports. So I wanted this to form into that as well. So behavioral challenges, speaking with parents in reference to kids who have been diagnosed with autism, kids who are in this space of ADHD, all those new things that when we were growing up, we had just a very little tidbit of it. We had
Yes.
no idea what was going on, but there's a lot of new spectrums coming, and we want to be able to introduce families, and we want to be able to contour children to be able to fit in their communities and become regional folks and not isolated. So that's what the Elysian Gifts is creating. And I'm hoping that we can get your cousin to be my mentor.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. And I have to give you his so you can reach out to him. He's so busy, because
I know.
he is so busy. And I tell you, the episode I did with him, I still think about those nuggets of wisdom, because I have two adult children now, but you know what? I still parent in a different way now because
Mhm.
they're adults. But it's like sometimes it's such a tricky relationship, and we make mistakes sometimes. And it's like that episode with him was an eye opener for sure. Definitely was.
I
But
enjoyed it. I
yeah.
enjoyed it. Yeah.
Vakita, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to coming back. I know I have you on the book in my books to come back soon.
Oh
And
yeah,
I'm really looking forward to our next conversation. I would like
absolutely.
to say to the viewers, I'm wishing you a blessed week. If you have any questions or comments, or you want to reach out to Fakita and I, please feel free to do so. If you watch the replay and you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out. Fakita, God
Thank
bless you. I
you.
reached out to you earlier this week and you agreed to do it. Thank you. I'm very
Thank you so
appreciative.
much. God bless you even the more. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care and God
All right.
bless.
Bye bye.